Attention, attention, attention. We're back. Hi guys, welcome back to Victoria Udoh. Victoria, I remain your host, Victoria Udoh, and today we're going to be talking about 7 important things that affect you as a young professional. 7 costly mistakes that have prevented you from landing your dream jobs. 7 critical mistakes on your curriculum vitae that has prevented you from joining that dream organization or industry. And so just before we go right in, welcome to all the new members of PD with V here on YouTube. Thank you for joining the family. For those who are the OGs that have been here from time, so nice to see you again. So let's get right into today's video because we'll not do a lot of conversation in today or talking or stirring, but let's get right into the gist. 5 reasons why you are failing to land that dream job, or the mistakes you're making on your curriculum vitae that you should stop making, and how to address this mistake. That is what we're going to be looking at in the next couple of minutes. So stay tuned. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Best Sound of Udoh Victoria, and we are going to get right into it. Right. All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Best Sound of Victoria Udoh, and if you're still yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button, like, and share this particular video as it could help you land your next big job. Now, let me start by saying that through studies or through research, I have come to see that, or it has now been known or said that recruiters, that is your HR managers and the rest of them, spend an average of 20 seconds looking at your CV. So imagine top industries, oil and gas industries, legal services industries, manufacturing industries, production industries, even your entertainment industries, and you're trying to send in application there. First off, you have to disabuse the notion that you're the only one trying to land that key role, especially when the organization makes an open call for recruitment, right? And you have to first of all understand that I'm not the only one that is applying. Secondly, this job, there are people that most likely from their credentials are way more qualified than you. But guess what? Sometimes it's not about the qualification. So what makes you stand out when you have thousands of applications to a particular industry that you're expected to, or you have a desire to work in, and you're trying to stand out, you're trying to be different, you're trying to ace this job application? What makes you stand out? When your recruiter spends about 20 seconds looking at your CV and you're not saying anything that makes you a solution-driven person or an individual that can prefer solution to the problems that the company is having, best believe that application will be sent out. Like, when you're looking at something, you're going through something and you're swiping on Instagram, you see a content that is very nauseating or, very repulsive, you just swipe up like this. That's exactly what's going to happen to your CV if your CV is not ATS compliant, or if it does not meet the standard, very basic standard requirement for every curriculum vitae. And over time, as someone who is, as most of you would know, the founder of the Dream It Get It initiative, that we craft curriculum vitae and we prepare people for job interviews and job applications and all that. And sometimes when people say, I want to revamp my CV, I want you to just review it and tell me what's wrong, tell me what I can do to make it better, I usually advise them instead you get a whole new CV, because half the time, in fact 90% of the time, what they're giving you are things that are not ATS compliant. Like, they're not standard CVs that every organization is looking out for. So you find out that people are sending job applications that have no bearing on the job that they're applying for. You're applying in a legal industry, especially for lawyers, you're applying in a legal industry, and some of the experiences that you are putting out there have nothing to do with your experience as a lawyer or as a law student, or before you even became a lawyer. Your experiences are just, blank. And then some people have questions like, what if I don't have any other experience? Like, do you think I can actually get into that particular industry? What can I do? Well, I'm here to present to you something I call the STAR method, STAR method. Now, the STAR method is a key, like I call it a diamond box that you have to unravel to be able to craft the best CV possible. Now, the STAR method, S stands for situation, T stands for task, A stands for action, and R stands for results. Situation, task, action, result. This is very, very important when you are crafting your CV, because guess what? What your employer is looking out for is what your role has been in your previous establishment before you got here. And if they do not see something really important before you got to where you're coming from, as in you're at their decks now telling them that you want them to employ you, let's assume you don't have any other experience. They want to see what was your trajectory, what did you do without the job application. Let's say for people that are just getting into the job market, what were you doing all the while before you even decided to apply to an industry? What makes you that candidate that is, most likely to succeed and help the firm grow? Because overall, every industry is looking for an individual, a creative mind, an authentic mind that can help develop their industry and take them to a different level. So if you're not coming with something like that, they're not interested in what you have to offer. So let's start with the standard breakdown of an ATS compliance survey. First off, your CV should have your name in full, your government name. In fact, if you do not know your name, go to your birth certificate and look for the way your name was written on your birth certificate and write it that way. So sometimes people will write their names from their surname to their first name to their middle name. Some people write surname, middle name, first name. Some people write first name, middle name, surname. I don't think there's any industry that determines how, in what order your name should come, but mostly it's usually your surname, your middle name, and your first name. So your surname, your middle name, your first name. For some others, it's your surname, your first name, and your middle name. So it's either you're saying Udoh Victoria Mo or you're saying Udoh Mo Victoria. So however you want to write it, I don't think there's a standard description for how your name should be written, but it has to be your name, like your documented name that you have in your passport and your ID cards. Now, the next thing you would see on your CV after your name is your address. So people have argued, right? I'm of the opinion that you cannot put Lagos State, Nigeria as your address. But some people say you don't need to put number 10 Sunny Estate, Lagos, Nigeria, because your employer has no business knowing exactly where you're living. But on the contrary, I like to think of it logically. You're not living the whole of Lagos State, so why are you putting Lagos State as your address? I mean, if you think otherwise, please feel free to leave your opinion in the comment section, because you're not living the whole of Lagos State, so your address cannot be Lagos State. You're living in a particular place. Let's assume you don't want to be specific. Just say an estate. Of course, I mean, you don't live in the entire estate. You live at a particular number, a house number in the estate. Let's assume you don't want to really be specific. Just say Sunny Estate, Lagos State, Nigeria, because you do not live in the entire Lagos, so you can't be putting Lagos State, Nigeria. And for those of you that do job applications for international organizations, please do your best to specify that you're in Nigeria when you're writing some of these states. Like, let's say you're writing Ogun and you don't put state, you just put Ogun. I'm sure your player will wonder, where is Ogun? What's this person talking about, right? And so it's important that you specify. Well, like I said, if you have your own ideas on whether it should be your full address or just the states in your CV, feel free to comment in the comment section. Let's trash it out. Now, the next thing you have after that is your email address, right? And please avoid having things like, in fact, the number one mistake now, and I would point out, is your unprofessional email addresses. Your name is Chijoke Francis Udoh and your email address is chiboyfine@gmail.com. What is that? Or your name is Victoria Udoh and your email address is hotqueenforever24@gmail.com or at yahoo.com. That is very unprofessional. Please, no matter how minute you think this thing is, they affect your recruiter's concept or overall review of your kind of person who is seeking to work, especially in professional organizations. It's very important to have a professional email address, your full name at gmail.com. You can have that other one to do whatever transactions you want to do, but if you're making a job application, it's very easy to create an email on Gmail these days, right? All you have to do is go to Gmail, Google Mail, and create an email. You can use that for your job application so that you appear professional. After that, the next thing you would have is most likely your contact number, which is 081, whatever you're putting there. But if it's an international application, please always include the country code +234, and then you put the numbers out there so that they understand your country code and know how to correctly communicate with you. So the next thing you would have after that is something I call a professional summary. Now, most times people craft CVs and have objectives. rather than a professional summary. So you're saying, you see after their names and all their contact information, the next thing you see is something like objectives: to be a motivation and an upbringing individual to this industry, having graduated with a first class at the University of Nigeria and Nsukka. I'm bringing this, I'm bringing that. Yeah, that's your objective. That's old stuff, right? In as much as you're trying to tell the organization what you're bringing to them, what they want to say is what you've accomplished or who you are before they even begin to say what are you bringing. So most do away with the objective statements and adapt a professional summary approach. You begin by, I am so and so, and I graduated from so and so. These are the skills I have. So that's what your professional summary is, like a 4-liner summary of who you are. So it could sound something like, I am a value-driven, detail-oriented graduate or lawyer. I mean, let's do lawyer's edition, right? So I'm a value-driven, detail-oriented legal practitioner with 2 years of experience in corporate commercial practice. That's one line, one sentence, right? So you've told us that you're a value-driven, detail-oriented legal practitioner, means you've been certified as a lawyer, and that you have so amount of experience in so area of practice. So if it's an industry that is what they're, looking out for, you've already ticked one box. And you tell them that in addition to that, you have maybe a master's degree in so and so, or you're either telling them that aside law, you do, this is not what you talk about your hobbies, but like when you say aside law, you have a degree in innovation management like I do. So, or you tell them that aside law, you found an organization that is centered on promoting human rights activities and things like that. So in addition to being a corporate commercial lawyer, you also engage in protection of individuals' fundamental human rights. So people are interested in saying things like that. And then at the end, you can now, the last sentence can now be what you aim to do, which is essentially to add value and help any organization you find yourself to grow. So by the time you put in that professional summary, you've given yourself about 2/10, right? Out of the entire thing, or maybe 4/10 out of the entire thing, because now you've introduced yourself, you've told your potential recruiter or employer who you are and what you aim to achieve. Not to help an organization grow, and you're sounding very archaic. Everyone has done away with objective statements. People are now dealing on professional summaries, which is something you should adapt when preparing your CV. Now, the next thing that I find out that, after that, the next thing you would have is essentially your education background. So it usually comes in the order of the most recent to the least recent. So you'll find out that people either start from your PhD, they have a PhD. What school did you get it from? What grade? What degree did you study? Your master's, your university degree, that's your bachelor's degree, any other external, academic certifications that you got. And then you talk about, I think the least for young professionals that are leaving school, you should stop at your WAEC. That's where you should stop. But some people, because they try to make their CV bulky, they even mention up to their primary school. But I don't think that's necessary. I think you should stop at where you got your West African, because for a lot of people, that is really, really important. Although I think if you've had your bachelor's degree, I don't think you could have gotten into university or any polytechnic or any institution without writing WAEC and JAMB. So, but either way, that is where it should stop. Don't tell us where you went to nursery school and tell us where you went to primary school. Half the time, we are not interested. Make sure you write it professionally. Now, the mistake people make after their professional summary, in fact, they don't even include professional summary. You start seeing irrelevant personal information like your ethnicity, their age, their marital status, their genotype. You don't need this information on your curriculum vitae. It is not important to have these information there. You just go straight to saying, this is what I do, this is my ethnicity, this is my... You don't do that. We are not interested in knowing that you are Igbo or you're Yoruba or you're Ibibio or you're Efik. We don't want to know. We don't want to know whether you're single or married. We don't want to know. We don't want to know how old you are, right? And some people don't understand that sometimes your age, you're putting all this detail could even be to your disadvantage. Because what if the organizer is now focused on, you're a 35-year-old woman and you are from, maybe you're Igbo, you're Yoruba, and possibly the driver that insulted her before she came and sat on your CV is a Yoruba man, and she's like, what's happening? I thought all these Yoruba people self. You really don't know. But these are personal information that could or could not affect you. So just leave them out. They're not important. When you get to the interview stage and the company wants to find out information, like they will ask you those questions. Do not put it on the face of your CV. Let your CV be where you would be judged essentially for your skill set and for your qualifications. After your academic qualification comes in your professional experience, which is very important. Now, leads me to the third problem. Now, remember the first one I said unprofessional emails, and I've mentioned irrelevant personal information. Now, the third one, irrelevant certifications. Avoid irrelevant certifications. They are the most. Stop putting out mundane information or irrelevant information there. If you're putting out certifications, let's be certifications that are relevant to your job description or relevant to the industry that you are applying to. Make sure your CV, in fact, the most important thing your CV has to have is relevancy to the industry that you're applying to. Now, let's talk about the third thing, which would now bring us to this STAR method that I mentioned, which is focusing on roles instead of achievements. That's a mistake. Stop focusing on your roles that you did in the office rather than the achievements you applied, you did, the achievements you met when you were in your previous place of employment. So sometimes people will say things like, I had a job of monitoring clients' feedback or things like that, as against I represented a client and obtained a favorable judgment in his favor. I managed the particular social media. Rather than saying all those things, I was in charge of managing the social media. Say things like, I implemented a new social media strategy that helped me with increasing engagement by about 30% or 40%. Those are the kind of information or details that you're supposed to put out there, rather than this other mundane details. Focus on the achievement, your role in achieving those achievements, and not on just the role. You were a personal assistant to a particular individual in a particular industry. Avoid telling us what you were doing as a personal assistant. You were scheduling his meetings, you were answering his emails and all that. Tell us that you implemented strategies to solve a particular problem, because I'm sure these were things that you encountered during the course of your work there. So focus on your achievements rather than your goals. That's number 4. And the last one, overly colorful and overly creative curriculum writers are really, really bad, because sometimes you find out that people do things that are pinkish in color, yellowish in color, golden in color, things like that, essentially because they feel like that is how best to go about it, right? But they forget that there's a standard, like a black and white one, right? 2 pages maximum, like bullet points and all that. That is how your curriculum writing should be. Should be 2 pages maximum. That's the standard. If you do your research, you will see that that's what is internationally accepted. 2 pages maximum. Your achievement and your goals should be in bullet points. You should use a minimum of 10 font size. It should be, marginalized. Like it should be, in a margin, it should be straight, it should be properly arranged sector by sector. The ones that need to be bold, the ones that need to be in italics. Don't start beginning your passport on your what's it called, on your CV. In fact, you might meet recruiters. We're Nigerians and we're human beings. We are generally influenced by different factors, and to avoid being judged maybe because of the way your lips look, the way your eyes look, the way your body is, or the way your eyes are, your complexion or whatever, avoid putting all these unnecessary details on your curriculum writing. Strictly push out your abilities rather than your colorful nature. Let your abilities and your achievements speak better for you. Now let's go back to the STAR method. Situation, task, action, result. That's what your achievement should focus on. What situation did you find yourself in? That is what role, what industry. So you have your experience, professional experience, like your role was personal assistant. You were working in Orlando PLC from so dates to so days. Number 1. And stop using the word I. Don't start with I implemented to so and so. So let's assume that as a personal assistant, you were scheduling meetings and doing all that for your employer. Let's start with I schedule meetings Monday to Friday every day for Mr. Delapo, my Oga. Don't do things like that. I promise you that I've seen CVs that look like that. And the funny thing is, we've been blessed this season with artificial intelligence that is capable of crafting CVs in the best way possible. But there's something about the human touch, which is why I tell people that's why I craft CVs. I enjoy doing it. There's something about that human touch when you're crafting CV, where you're trying to visualize something and bring a person's experience into life. You're trying to quantify what the person has done. So what was the situation? That is your role What was the task you were assigned to, right? What did you do? So what was your task? You cannot be putting you were a personal assistant, or as a lawyer, you cannot be putting that you were an associate, and you're putting things like, I used to go and buy coffee for my boss. I used to sweep the office when I come late in your CV. We don't want to see things like that. Let's assume that you worked in an industry that was what you do, as most NYC associates or training associates will find themselves doing in small scale firms. Well, my dear, I'll tell you for a fact, you don't need those things on your CV. You can find a way to fine tune it, that your daily contributions to the office led to the office being in a state that was acceptable for the client and things like that. What actions did you take? What was the problem? That's what your CV is looking for. What was the problem? What actions did you take, and what were the results? That's it. What was the problem? What was the action you took, and what was the result? That's what every recruiter is saying, because if you took action to solve a particular problem, you're inadvertently telling them that you have critical thinking skills to analyze problems, rather than going to your skills session, core competencies, and putting, I work under pressure, I can analyze something, I have so skills. You essentially tell them these things through your job description in your professional settings. So avoid putting all those unnecessary things that come in line with whatever else is to be there. Make sure that whatever you're doing, you're bringing out a situation where you acted and what results came out for you. So let's do a quick summary of what we have learned so far. 1, avoid irrelevant certifications. Avoid unprofessional emails. Avoid putting out your roles rather than your achievements. Focus on using the STAR method. Avoid displaying or involving us in unnecessary personal information. Now, what do you do as your solution to avoid all these things? Number 1, tailor your CV for description based on your job description. Your employer is looking at you. Say, okay, you saw the recruitment notice. They said they are looking for associates in a firm. You do social media management on the side. That should not be the entire. If I tell people, if you have like 5 skills, have 5 CVs for them. For instance, I have a CV as a legal practitioner. I have a CV to apply for jobs. I have a CV as a virtual assistant because I have experience. I have a CV as a head of grants and partnership for firms that I'm interested in applying for that. So let each CV be tailored to the skill that you have. Tailor your CV for your job description. Quantify your achievements rather than vague statements. Don't just tell us your rules, quantify the achievements. Tell us the problems you solved, the action you took, and the results that you got. Use clean, friendly, ATS compliant designs, not overly colorful designs. Lastly, have a professional summary. And it will guide you a lot if you can get someone rather than an AI to prepare a standard CV for you. But I'm sure with these guidelines, you should be able to put together a well-crafted CV. But assuming you really need someone to review your CV for you before you send out that job application, please do well to send me a DM or a message, or in fact, just comment, help me with my CV in the comment section. And I will send you a DM and we will look for a way to address that. So if you need help with that, just help me with my CV in the comment section and we're going to work with it. So ladies and gentlemen, let me leave you with this very, very important quote that I saw yesterday on CV while I was researching for this, right? So permit me to read this out. Your CV is just a list of where you've been. It is a map of where you can take your next employer to. Fix these things in your CV and you will stop being a candidate and become a solution to the problem. Your CV is a list of where you've been, your life experience, and it now becomes a map for your employer. So if you're able to address this problem that I have pointed out that is holding you back from your CV holding you back from, landing your dream job, then you'll be able to stop being just a job applicant, but a solution to the problem that every industry is looking for. And once you become a solution, you become an invaluable asset to that organization. And guess what? You land a job and start earning in tens of figures and millions of naira. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is all from us today on Personal Udoh with Victoria, and I'm super excited to be your host once more. Thank you, and until next time, make sure your CV is ATS friendly. Bye.